Hello there and welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Bullshit. I am your host, Dr. Stephanie Snyder, and I am a high-performance mentor. Through my unique blend of strategy, mindset, and intuition, I help men and women to cut through the BS in order to create the life and business they desire. And I just lost what I was going to discuss here. Shoot, that'll be a thing. Okay, I've got it back. All right, so if you have been with me for any time, I appreciate you for sure being here. If you are new, thank you so much for being here. I do want to reflect back on an episode earlier in the year where I discussed the idea of refinement. And this was something that came to my awareness, I believe back in January, based off of the notes that I just looked at. And I remember going through my Facebook memories and seeing very similar thoughts and ideas showing up through the years, like year after year after year after year. And while I was journaling about it, I asked, like, hey, why do I keep hitting my head against these things? Why is this something that I'm not learning per se? And I was reminded of this concept of refinement, where we all have heard of an oil refinery, right? An oil refinery takes the oil and it constantly removes the impurities, and it does it repeatedly. And this process is about becoming, I guess, cleaner, a better quality of whatever the material is. And so there's a refinement process where it takes out all the things that are no longer of value or worthy. And so that was kind of the word I got at the beginning of the year was I'm going through a refinement process where the stuff that's no longer serving me is really being shedded. It's being let go of. And I have noticed it for sure. The things that I actually focused on this summer specifically was a whole lot more present time with my kids. We did a lot of time at the pool. We did, several days at the water park. We definitely got our money's worth at the water park. But it was a lot more quality time and less like doing, if that makes sense. It was more just how can we spend time together without feeling like I have to constantly entertain you. And that was really quite fun. And it reminded me of like, it really became a matter of that other things were not priorities. My goodness, my voice is, I'm cracking here. And the language that I started to use with my children throughout the summer was like, hey, that's not a priority right now. And just getting very clear about, hey, like, yes, we could do that thing, and yes, we could do that thing, and yes, we could do that, but those are not priorities right now. There are things that are earmarked. There are priorities that are happening right now, and those are the things that are in place. Not to say that any of the other stuff doesn't matter, but just being very conscious of my bandwidth. And something that I have been working on really the last few weeks is just the constant decision to trust in my vision, because there have been times where I falter, and you don't tend to, we struggle to see the progress behind the wall, right? I truly believe that we are divinely guided and intuitively led, and that we have a Heavenly Father who has our best interest in mind, right? Now, we don't always keep our hands out of things long enough for that stuff to actually come to fruition. And that is something that I've definitely been working on in the last few weeks, is just a constant reset of like, okay, where do I actually want to go? And let's be more intentional with that. How do I want this to feel? Let's be intentional about that. Let's make decisions, even more specific decisions based off of where we want to be instead of where we are currently out of an emotional, chaotic feeling, right? Because oftentimes, and I just had this conversation with my son and his friend, oftentimes we will make decisions in the height of an emotion based off of that emotion right there in that moment. And emotional decisions do not always serve us down the road. Now, sometimes those emotions are intuitively led and it's like, yes, absolutely, right? Um, but as I've said before, when emotions are high, intelligence is low, and vice versa. When intelligence is high, emotions are low. And this is not to say that one is better than the other. You have to have both of them to be a balanced human being, okay? But when you're making decisions, especially when you are starting to shift and make changes, one of them is going to be better than the other. And I do have these conversations with my kids, especially, right? Like last week, there was a knockout blowdown, whole big screaming match in regards to who was helping with laundry, right? We all needed our time out. We were all about done with each other. And there was a lot of yelling in regards to this laundry, myself included. But it was coming from an emotional state. Somebody did something to somebody, and then we responded 100% through emotion. Now, once emotion was out of it, we were like, okay, that was actually really silly that we all started this screaming fight over laundry. But that was where we were at. And so we gave ourselves little times out. We separated ourselves from each other and regrouped, and it was fine, right? And there were maybe one or two of those this summer, not very often, which is why I do love having my children home. We emotionally regulate well. And so when it comes to these things, though, if you do not slow down long enough to choose differently, you will continue to repeat the same thing again and again and again and again and again. And that was part of what was going through my mind this morning. My previous episode, I shared with you a little bit about dropping my kids off at school for the first day of 3rd and 6th grade. Hot mess express, leaving the school, definitely in tears. And I really started to beat myself up. I was feeling sad, and my sad spiraled into "you're a failure" nonsense, right? Which is not true at all, right? But it just, that's where it spiraled. And I really had to regroup myself and say, okay, hey, like, where are we going? And maybe we're not there yet, right? Maybe this feels the same as something else does, but how are we shifting it now in the moment? What are we paying attention to? What are we focusing on? And how are we in charge of our energy moving forward? Because I truly do believe that there are miracles around us. Small ones certainly provide the proof that the bigger ones are on their way. And so it's just a matter of the refining, taking out the stuff that you don't need. What do I not need anymore? Well, I definitely don't need to subscribe to the negative Nelly who is telling me that I'll never amount to anything because I was sad this morning dropping my kids off at school, right? Like, we definitely don't need that voice going on in our heads. And so, how do you reframe it? Well, it's a choice. When you catch it, you go, okay, do I want to be here? Do I not want to be here? And if I want to be here, why? Do I need to stay with this a little bit longer? Or am I good? Can I move on? And I didn't stop to give myself that question. I kept just trying to avoid it instead of being like, all right, let's feel the sadness here. Because it is sad, right? Like, summer's coming to a close, if not already. But do I have a lot to look forward to? Yes, absolutely. A ton of things to look forward to, right? And so definitely excited about the future. Can be sad about today, parts of today, but excited to pick up my kids after school, those kinds of things, right? So I say all of these things in hopes that you realize that who you are becoming is the greatest thing you can spend your time and energy and resources on, because that will determine all other things. And you have the ability to become whoever it is that you desire. And that is probably the coolest thing, right? Like, there's truly nothing in your way. And you can create whatever it is that you want. That's kind of fun. So, as my journaling session ended this morning, we don't want to focus on what if it doesn't work. We want to focus on what if it does work, and hang out in that energy and that space, because, well, that's how you create magnetism. So I'm sending you a lot of love. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, be you, because the world needs more of you. Bye.